Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? So we are live here on Facebook. If you're out there and you're tuning in and you can hear me, go ahead and leave a comment letting me know that you can hear me and that coming in loud and clear. Let's see, checking phone here to see who's joining us and making sure that everything's working correctly. So today we're going to be talking about goal setting, specifically the goal setting process that we have implemented and we've been experimenting with over the last 32 months. So almost 3 years now, when we really, in all earnesty, began trying to set goals for the company and began experimenting with different formats and different methods of setting goals. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to share the exact process. We're going to share exactly how we've gone about implementing these goals and the results that have come out of setting the goals. I'm going to share with you some resources, some specific books that we've used. And hey, Tori, thanks for joining us. Some books that we've used and also going to give away some copies of the book. So let me show you real quick. And I'm going to talk about these in more detail here in just a bit. So the very first one is called The Game of Work. We're going to talk about this in more detail. Going to give away some copies of this book. Then we also are going to talk about the 12-week year and give away a couple of copies of that one. And then Measure What Matters. And we will give away a couple copies of this one as well. So here's what we're going to do to win a copy of one of the books. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click on the share button on Facebook. And then there's another option when you click that that's going to say start a watch party, start a watch party. So you're going to click share, then you're going to click start a watch party. When you do that, that's how we will know. That's how you're going to be entered to win a copy of one of these books. So again, click share, then click start a watch party. And that's what we're going to do. So if you have questions, I'm going to do my best. You'll see me glancing down from time to time. Unfortunately, the way the streaming works is you have to actually look at it on a different device to get the comments. I guess we're not as tech savvy as we should be. Let me go ahead now and share my screen. And let's see here. One second. All right. Hey, Richard, thanks for joining us. Angela, thanks for joining us. So we're going to be talking about goal setting and the process that we've used. This process is not only used by us, but it's used by Google. It's used by Amazon, Netflix, Bono and his nonprofit. So yes, Bono of U2 fame. This is the process that he uses. And we're going to share how we've adapted this process and how we've ended up where we are today with this process. So again, if you want to win a copy of one of the books we're going to be talking about today, simply click the share button. When you click the share button, click start a watch party, start a watch party. And we're going to be selecting 6 people. So we're going to give away 2 copies of each book. 6 people will win a copy of the book or one of the books today. Let's go ahead and dive in. It looks like everyone can see the screen here. So let's dive into this. So first of all, I want to say thank you. I know that, all of you have other things that you could be doing. Maybe you should be doing right now. Maybe this is an escape for you to avoid doing something you should be doing. But thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us for this presentation. And I hope that not only will you take something away from our time together today, but that specifically you will actually implement one thing, at least one thing that we talk about today into your life and into your business. Today is for you if you're not consistently reaching your company goals, if you're tired of struggling to get your team aligned, you have low employee morale, a lack of peer-to-peer accountability, and you have a difficult time keeping track of who is responsible for what. Anybody can relate to any of those out there? I know that consistency is a key, and I know it's something that all of us struggle with, in our personal lives, in our companies, in our teams, in our organizations. And so that is something that we're going to talk about today, and specifically how this process helps you be more consistent, not just for your business, for your organization, but in your personal life as well. We're going to talk about today what we replaced our traditional goal setting system with, and why you'll want to do the same thing. So for me, I grew up kind of understanding this idea of you just set a goal. And when you write your goals down, you may have heard this. How many of you have heard this? When you write your goals down, you're much more likely to achieve them, right? So we used to, come up with goals, we'd write them down, and we would, quote unquote, work to achieve those goals. And the thing was, we spent years, literally 8 years, with very little progress. And I'm going to share with you why that's true and how we've changed that. We're also going to talk about how we've aligned our team around goals, how it's created peer-to-peer accountability, and we'll also talk about why your goals, the goals that you have for yourself, maybe personally, or your organization, are probably too low. So let's start with talking about workplace and workplace culture and what it's actually like out there in the real world. So according to a recent Gallup poll study, they discovered that in the American workplace, roughly 30% of all workers are actively engaged on their job. What does that mean? That means they actually show up, they like their job, and they're engaged in their job, trying to get better each and every day. But they also discovered that 54% of the workers they surveyed were disengaged. So in other words, they weren't excited about showing up for work. They didn't find meaning in their work, and they were simply disengaged. It was just a job for them. And here's the scary one. 16% of the people they surveyed, 16% of them were actively disengaged. What does that mean? That means not only are they disengaged, actively disengaged means they're actively trying to get others to be disengaged as well. Can you think about that? 16% of the people they surveyed in American workplaces were actively distracting others, trying to discourage others in the workplace. So between those two, between the disengaged and actively disengaged, there are 70% of the workers out there who are either disengaged or actively disengaged. So question, how can you as a company, as a team, as an organization, reach your goals when you have so many people actively disengaged? And the answer is you can't. When you have that level of disengagement, whether just disengaged or actively disengaged, it's impossible. It's literally impossible for you and your organization to reach their goals. Here's another thing that's very shocking and very sad. It's that 7%, according to Harvard Business Review, only 7% of team members in companies, employees, fully understand that their company's business strategies and goals. And then what is it that's expected of them to help them achieve those goals? So in other words, out of 100%, out of 100 people, only 7 understand the company's strategies and goals, and then what is expected of them to help them reach those goals and reach those strategies. So again, is it any wonder that businesses, particularly small businesses, struggle to reach their goals? Business owners often feel like they're constantly banging their head against the wall, trying to get people to pay attention, trying to get people to be engaged. It's like this guy right here. He feels like he's having to use a megaphone to try to get this gentleman engaged in what they're trying to accomplish, engaged in the vision, engaged in the goals, and engaged in the company itself. I don't know about you guys out there, but sadly, there's so many people out there that experience this on a daily basis. And it's from both perspectives. So on the one hand, you've got, the manager, the leader, the owner who is, discouraged because he feels like he's having to yell at the team. And I use that figuratively. I can't even say the word. I use that figuratively. But then on the other hand, you've got the team members who feel like they're constantly being yelled at or prodded and pushed to try to achieve these goals. And so today we're going to talk about the goal setting solution that we've come across that eliminates this. It eliminates this process so that neither one feels frustrated. Neither one feels like they're having to push or prod or pull, that everyone's pulling in the same direction. What would your business, what would your organization look like? What would it look like this year if your team was aligned and they showed up every single day, right? And they were all pulling in the same direction. And then think about this. What if there was actually peer-to-peer accountability? In other words, when I say peer-to-peer accountability, what I mean is, what if it wasn't top-down accountability? What if coworkers were holding each other accountable? What if they were challenging each other on their goals? That's exactly what we've been able to put in place at Ugly Mug. And again, it's been about a 32-month process. So it's not a quick process, but what I can tell you, from my perspective at least, is that it's definitely worth the time, the energy, and the effort to do this. And for lots of reasons. One is the results. The results will speak for themselves. But then two, for the culture of the business of the organization, of your company that you're working for. Real quick about us, for those who maybe don't know who we are, what we do. So we're a marketing company. We work in kind of three core buckets. Our buckets are website development, social media marketing. Specifically, we're really great at Facebook and Instagram. That's where we can get really solid results. And then traditional marketing, that would be everything from television, radio, print, billboards, whatever it may be. And that's really about building out strategies. We've been fortunate to work with clients literally from around the world. I think 7, 8, or 9, I can't remember now, countries around the world. We've run well over 10,000 individual Facebook campaigns on Facebook. In one of our online training programs, it's a Facebook training program, we've got 13,000 students enrolled from 151 countries around the world. And to date, we've built well over 600 custom websites. So that's just a little bit about who we are and what we do. This is a map, as you can obviously tell. It's a treasure map. And oftentimes in business and organizations, we get these maps, we pull out a map and we think, okay, this is the thing. Maybe one of these books, we grab a book off the shelf and we're like, you know what? This is going to be my map. This is going to be how we're going to go from where we are today to where we want to be, to where the treasure is, right? And the problem with that mentality is this: there's not one map. There's not just one map. As you will see from today, to develop the system that we're currently using, it's a hybrid. It's a culmination or combination of 3 different books, these 3 different books right here. And so I'm going to share with you how we've ended up with the map that we have, and hopefully how you can take that map and implement it into your organization. So step 1 is you have to have clarity. And from all the stats we talked about above, the number of disengaged and actively disengaged employees, and the fact that only 7% of employees even know their company's strategies and goals. What is clear is there's very little clarity in the workplace, right? So if you were to go survey your team, if you have a team, what percentage of those people could tell you what your strategies are, what the common goals are, and then how they specifically, how their role helps lead towards those strategies or uses those strategies to help lead towards the achievement of those goals. It's all about clarity. Clarity is key. There's a saying that I heard several years back, and the saying was this, that most little league softball or baseball teams are better run than most small businesses. So let me say that one more time. I heard the saying that most little league softball or baseball teams are better run than most businesses. And the reason was this: the person making that quote said that most little league teams, they all understand what the objective is. The objective is what? To score runs, right? The objective is to prevent the other team from scoring runs. And so they understand the objectives. They understand that when they get up to bat, their goal is to get on base. They understand that when they get on first base, their goal is to get on second, et cetera, et cetera. And the sad thing is that most organizations, most businesses, they can't say the same thing. The stats from Harvard Business Review, from the Gallup poll study, they all indicate that we as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as team leaders, we're doing a terrible job of creating clarity for our teams. And so that's what today is really going to be about. It's about creating clarity. It's about creating clarity for your team. It's about creating clarity for each member of your team so that they understand where you're going and how they can help you get there. So let's start again by talking about this particular book, The Game of Work. Now, before we dive in, again, for everyone watching, if you click on the share button, and then when you click on share on Facebook, there will be another option to start a watch party. If you start a watch party, you will be entered automatically to win a copy of one of these books. We're going to give away 2 copies of each of these books. So go ahead and share, start a watch party so you can let other people know that we're doing this event. Kind of our introduction into this whole concept started with this book called The Game of Work. It's a phenomenal book. Highly, highly recommend this book. So if you don't win, make sure you pick up a copy of this book. And the premise of this book is simply this, that when you create a scoreboard, when you create a game out of your work, people will know how they're doing on a daily basis, and that will give them the ability to self-correct, right? So if they know they're not winning the game very well, they can self-correct. And when they can self-correct, it prevents you from having to constantly jump in and correct on their behalf. So here's what we picked up from The Game of Work. We began implementing what we would call scoreboards. And this would be an example of a simple scoreboard. So this showed the number of websites, custom built versus template websites that we built. This was a couple of years ago. So again, this has been a journey for us. This is a little over right at 2 years ago for this one. And you can see we were tracking template websites versus custom built. Another one was this one. So this is showing some trends here. So this is showing the average, the means, and then it's also showing another trend, which would be kind of where we are in relation to a shorter period of time. What's the trend line itself? And as you can see from this, it's great. It's a scoreboard, but it got a little complex. You can see this one, this was tech support, time spent in tech support. And you can see that the problem with the scoreboard is it was very difficult for someone to pick up and interpret this data. What does this data mean? You know, if you look at what's here, it kind of looks like a heart monitor, EKG monitor, I guess, that's showing the whatever that thing shows. Evidence, I have no clue what I'm talking about when it comes to medical stuff. The problem that we ran into with The Game of Work was that the scoreboards were great and they were a huge step in the right direction, but there wasn't enough clarity, right? There was too much complexity around those scoreboards. So we then came across this book, Measure What Matters. Measure What Matters. And it introduced us to a concept called OKRs. OKRs. Anybody out there know what OKRs stands for? What is an O, a K, and an R? What does that stand for? Let's see. Anybody, somebody can guess it and get it right here on Facebook in the comments. Get it right. We'll send you a copy of the book. What does OKR stand for? Somebody's got to guess. Somebody give me a guess there on Facebook. Guess we can sit here and I'll sip some tea and just hang out and drink tea together while we wait on somebody to guess. Richard, Tori, Angela, somebody out there, give us a guess. What's an OKR? So I'm gonna wait on that, but let's keep rolling. Somebody's gonna give us a guess here in the comments of what an OKR is. Deloitte said in their Deloitte review said that no single factor has more impact on employee engagement than clearly defined goals that are written down and freely shared. So question for you, are your organization's goals written down? Are they clearly defined? And are they freely shared within your organization? If the answer is no, that is starting place one. Starting place one is you have to have that. You have to have them clearly defined, and then you have to have them written down and then shared amongst the organization. Steve, you got it right, Steve. So the answer is objectives and key results. So Steve, we will send you a copy. Tori, that was close, super close, optimizing key results, super close. not quite. So Steve, we will send you a copy of the book. Congrats. Another one here is 90% of experiments in the field confirm that productivity is enhanced by well-defined challenging goals. So question for you as leaders, are your goals clearly defined? Does everyone on the team understand what those goals are? And I don't need you to sugarcoat it. Like, it doesn't do me any good for you to sugarcoat it and say, well, yeah, but the answer is yes or no, right? The answer is yes or no. And we're going to talk about how you can clearly define those goals here in just a second. So be honest with yourself. Are they clearly defined or not? What are OKRs? So here's what we're going to cover today. What are OKRs? Again, they're objectives and key results. 2, how do you create objectives and key results? 3, how do you manage your organization with objectives and key results? And then step 4, which would be, what are the next steps? What are the things that you should do as soon as we end our time together today, right? As soon as we end our time, what are the things that you should be doing? So let's start with defining what are OKRs. So OKRs, as Steve told us, are objectives and key results. Here's how they are different than goals. You may want to grab a screenshot of this. This is important. They're different from goals because 1, they're more transparent. 2, they're more predictable paths towards success. 3, they create clear expectations for everyone on your team. Number 4, they create a sense of ownership and responsibility. Number 5, they make it easier, much, much easier to have difficult conversations. What do I mean by that? Here's what I mean. If someone on your team clearly understands where you're going as an organization and then how they are supposed to be contributing to that, right, to the accomplishment of that thing, if they fall out of line, in other words, they're not carrying their weight, they're not making their contribution, it becomes that much easier to have those difficult conversations because A, they know where you are going as an organization. B, they know how they're supposed to be contributing. Therefore, if those two things don't match, right, they're not contributing in the way that they should be contributing, having those difficult conversations is that much easier. And then finally, they increase peer-to-peer accountability. They increase peer-to-peer accountability, which is huge. And we'll talk about that. Who else uses them? So here's some other companies: Netflix, Airbnb, Amazon, Samsung, GE, Dropbox. The list goes on and on. Those are all the big companies, obviously, that use them. What are objectives? So objectives are the what's. The what's. What is it that you're pursuing? They express goals and intents. They are aggressive. They must be tangible. They must be objective, unambiguous, right? In other words, they've got to be super clear. They should be obvious to a rational observer whether an objective has been achieved or not. And I'm going to come back and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. They are the stuff of inspiration and far horizons. So Elon Musk, an objective for SpaceX is to what? Put people on Mars, right? That's inspirational. That's far horizons. That's the objective. That's what they're pursuing. That's the what. There are 2 different types of objectives. There's aspirational objectives, and then there are committed objectives. So the aspirational objective for Elon Musk would be to put people on Mars, and committed objectives for them would be the intermediate pieces. And we're going to dive into some examples of that. So committed objectives are things that you're committing to achieving in their entirety, no matter what, right? So these are things that are more concrete. They're things that are more within reach. That's not good grammar, but you know what I'm saying. They're easier within reach for you. They're not out there. They're not as big, not as grand, but you're going to achieve them no matter what. Aspirational objectives, these are big. These are the moonshots, right? These are the things to put you out there. The 10X rule, for those of you who may be familiar with that, the 10X rule basically says that if your goal is going to be to increase by X, you should 10X that goal. And the reason is this: it forces you to think completely differently. If you want to grow by 10% a year, that's great. That's a worthwhile goal. That's something that you should pursue and could pursue. But to increase your revenue by 10% a year doesn't require you to change much. It doesn't require you to be a different leader. It doesn't require your team to be different team players. It doesn't require them to step up and learn to lead. But if you were to grow by 10x. That's going to require you as a leader to completely alter the way you lead. It's going to require your organization to completely change, completely adapt, and look completely different to make that happen. So aspirational should be huge. They should be big objectives, things that you're pursuing. Remember, small goals, small objectives are uninspiring. They're uninspiring. And if something is uninspiring, it's impossible for you to build momentum in your culture, in your team, if they're not inspired by what it is that you're trying to achieve and accomplish. Again, 10X goals are going to stretch your thinking and your actions. Don't reduce your target. Instead, increase your action. So instead of reducing what it is you're pursuing, increase the level of commitment, increase the level of activity. So key results, we're going to cover those. Any questions on objectives? And again, we're going to come back and I'm going to give you some very tactile, some real examples of what these look like. Anybody out there have a question right now on key results? Or I'm sorry, on objectives. Anybody out there with a question? All right, no questions at this point. So let's dive into key results. What are key results? Key results are the hows. Those are going to be the things that describe the outcomes, not the activities. They must answer what, how much, and by when. So the key results are the pieces. They're the building blocks that are going to get you to that big objective, right? They're more earthbound. They're more metric driven. They have levers that you pull. They're marks to hit. They're goals along your way. So if you think about Elon Musk and SpaceX, so his goal is to put people on Mars. He's had a lot of key results that lead up to that. And he still has more. So one of them would be, I guess it was maybe a little better than a month ago now when they put 2 astronauts from American soil and launched them and connected them with the International Space Station, right? That was a key result. That was a step in the process towards putting people on Mars. So the key results are going to be the answers to what are we accomplishing and by when. That's going to lead us to that objective that we're pursuing. And there's 2 different types of these. Just like there's 2 different types of objectives, there's 2 different types of key results. There's inputs and outputs. An output key result would be something that's measured kind of in hindsight. So it'd be sales, it'd be revenue, it'd be growth, it'd be expanding your customer base. Those would be output key results. Input key results would be the things that are put in that result in the output, right? So in other words, if we're going to increase sales, we're going to have to increase the number of phone calls that we made. We're going to have to increase the number of proposals written. We're going to have to increase the number of meaningful conversations that we've had. And so those would be input key results. Those are the things that we put in to get those outputs. And you're going to want both of those. You're going to want input and output. Here's an important point. The completion of all your key results must result in the attainment of your overarching objective. What's going on, Heath? Thanks for joining us. Hope all is well, sir. This is an important point. When you're putting together your objective and your key results, what you want to make sure is true is that your key results are in alignment, are in pursuit of reaching, completing that objective that you set forth, okay? So how do you actually create OKRs? Glad you asked. So here's an example of a weak OKR, an average OKR, and a strong OKR. So the weak one says, the objective is we're going to win the Indy 500, so the Indianapolis 500. The key result on the weak one is we're going to increase our lap speed. Key result number 2 is we're going to reduce our pit stop time. So again, if we were to analyze your goals in your organization, chances are they're more likely looking like this weak side, right? And look, we spent 8 years doing this exact same thing. So I'm not preaching from the perspective of we've got this all figured out. I'm preaching from the perspective of it took us a long time, a lot of years of doing it incorrectly to finally put together the pieces that enable us to do it correctly today, which doesn't necessarily mean it'll be correct for us tomorrow, but it's correct for us today. So an average OKR says this: the objective is still the same. We're going to win the Indianapolis 500. The key result number 1 is we're going to increase our average lap speed by 14 seconds. Key result number 2, we're going to reduce our pit stop time by 1 second. So look at the difference between the week OKR and the average OKR. You can see what's happening is our objective is still the exact same. The difference is this: we are now getting a bit more specific with what those key results are going to be. So now it's not just increased lap speed, but we're going to increase lap speed by 14 seconds, right? And then we're going to reduce pit stop time by 1 second. Now look at a strong one. So the strong one says we're still going to win the Indy 500. Here's how we're going to make sure we do that. 1, increase lap speed by 14 seconds. 2, reduce average pit stop time by 1 second. 3, we're going to practice pit stops for 1 hour every single day. 4, we're going to test in a wind tunnel at least 10 times. Number 5, we're going to reduce pit stop errors to 1 or less per stop. So question for you to ponder: which of these looks more like the goals that you have for your organization? Or which of these looks more like the goals that you have for yourself as an individual, right? Your objective, no pun intended, is to make them strong. It's to make them measurable. It's to make them so that it's very clear if you're on track, you're not on track, et cetera. So just for those who are joining us, we got some new people joining us here. We're going to be giving away copies of each of these books. I'm giving away 2 copies of each of these books. And the way that you enter to win is simply clicking on share on Facebook. Click the share button, and then you will see an option that says start a watch party. Click start a watch party, and you will be entered to win a copy of the book. And we're going to be giving away 2 copies of each of those books. So you've got a good chance of winning. Let's keep rolling forward here. OKR, who sets the OKRs? So if you're a leader in an organization, you should have an overarching, a primary OKR for the organization. And then within that, each department can set their own OKRs. But each department, their OKR should lean into the primary OKR that's set for the entire company. And then below each department, each team member would then set their own OKRs, and their OKRs should lean into or should help ensure that their department is reaching their objectives and key results. So that's who sets them. Individual OKRs, we just talked about this, should align with the company. They should align with their department, and also they should align with their role, their specific role in the company. Let's look at a football example. Given the fact that everything going on in the world right now, we don't know what's going to happen with this football season. So this may be a hypothetical here, but let's take a look at this example. So let's say that you're the general manager of an NFL team. Your objective, the owner comes to you and says, look, your objective is to make more money for me. The key results are, we want you to win the Super Bowl, and we want you to fill the stands to 90+%. Okay. Those are your objective and your 2 key results. Let's take a look at how this filters down through the organization. So the head coach then, his objective is to win the Super Bowl. What are the key results for him that he can help ensure them a win, right? Them a Super Bowl win. And that's this: pass for 300 yards or more per game. Ensure that the defense doesn't allow or doesn't give up more than 17 points per game. And that their special team ranks in the top 3 in punt return coverage. So this is the head coach's key results, objective and key results. Now, from the head coach, he has an offensive coach underneath him. And so the offensive coach now takes that 300 yards per game key result, and that becomes the offensive coach's objective, right? Because that's his department, so to speak. So the key results there would be, if we're going to pass for 300+ yards per game, key result number 1 is we have to have 65% pass completion rate. Number 2, we need to cut interceptions to fewer than 1 per game. And number 3, we need a new quarterbacks coach, right? We need a new coach to work with all our quarterbacks. What's it mean for the defense? The defensive coach says, okay, my objective now is to make sure that we give up fewer than 17 points per game. My key results to do that: how am I going to prevent the opponent from scoring more than 17 points per game? And there's 3 ways he's going to focus on doing that. Number 1, he's going to allow less than 100 yards rushing per game. They're going to increase the number of sacks to at least 3 per game. And then they're going to focus on developing a Pro Bowl. In other words, a top of the line, Pro Bowl's a kind of a selection. So it's only the best get to go to the Pro Bowl cornerback. So they want someone that's going to be the best in the league on their team. They're going to develop their cornerback into that. So you can see how it flowed down from the general manager to the head coach, to the offensive coach, to the defensive coach. And now we're at the special teams coach, right? So he's taken the head coach's 3rd key result, which was top 3 in the country for punt return coverage. It's got 2 key results: allow fewer than 10 yards per punt return, and to block 4 or more punts this season. So again, you can see how it's filtered all the way down through the organization. Now let's take a look at this in a more detailed view. So we got the general manager, right? We've got his objective and key results. And remember that his key result number 1 was to win the Super Bowl. But what about key result number 2? Fill the stands to 90+%. Well, he's got a senior vice president of marketing. And the senior vice president of marketing, that person's job is to fill the stands to 90+%. That's their objective. The key results would be: 1, we're going to upgrade the team branding. 2, we're going to improve the media coverage that we get. 3, we're going to revitalize in-stadium promotional program. Now, what do you think is going to happen here? The exact same thing that just happened on the other side. It's going to flow down throughout the organization. So now the marketing director, that person's objective becomes upgrading the team branding. How are they going to do that? 1, they're going to target 2 colorful players for a new marketing campaign. And then 2, they're going to create a more compelling team slogan. So again, they take the objective from the senior vice president and it becomes an objective. And then they get 2 key results. Then what happens? The publicist gets the objective of improving media coverage. How are they going to do that? They're going to arrange for players to attend charity events. They're going to invite 20 sports reporters to a meet and greet, and they're going to share photos of events on social media. I kind of doubt that, Steve, but Steve said that I might get a call from an NFL owner. I would welcome it, but I kind of doubt it. If you know someone, Steve, feel free to, pass along the info and get my contact. I'll be glad to talk with them. So then it goes over to the merchandise manager. The objective there is to revitalize the in-stadium promotion. And so how are they going to do that? They're going to contact 10 souvenir companies. They're going to price out 5 options. They're going to present the ideas for stadium giveaways by August 1st. So you can see how we went from very broad and we're getting very, very specific. And here's the amazing thing. It's crystal clear who is responsible for what objective and what key results, right? There's no question about it. So here are kind of the steps that you're going to want to go through. Number 1, you're going to want to identify the primary objectives to pursue. Here's some questions to ask. What is the most important thing for the next 3, 6, or 12 months? What is the most important thing? Next, what are our main priorities for this upcoming period? And then finally, where should our team concentrate their efforts over this period of time? Those are the questions for you as the leader that you must ask. You must identify the answers to those things. Then you're going to get feedback. You're going to get feedback from multiple directions, not just one direction, but from multiple directions. You want outside advice. You want peers in the industry. You want peers outside your industry. You want your team's feedback. And then from there, you're going to develop your key results. Okay, so once you set that objective, you're then going to develop your key results. And again, same process. Once you set those key results, you're going to get feedback from everyone. Now, an important thing to remember about key results, the key results that you set, they must, if completed, result in the attainment of the objective. In other words, if you complete those key results, you're going to reach that objective. And then you're going to present it to the team or department for feedback and revise and get to work. Now, what I can tell you from our experience going through this and doing this, that it's a very fluid process. It's not I'm going to write down my goals on a sheet of paper, my objectives and my key results, and I'm done. No, it's a very fluid process, meaning you should have people challenging you. You should have people from the outside, people from within your organization challenging you and ensuring that, one, your objectives are correct, right? That you're aiming for the right things, but then two, that those key results are in alignment with the objectives that you've set. Any questions on what we've covered so far? Any questions? If you've got a question, just type it in the comments and I will do my best to take a look at that and answer those questions. So here are some common questions that we get asked when we talk about this stuff. How many objectives should you have? And the answer is 3 to 5 is ideal. 3 to 5 is ideal. You don't want more than that. Why is that? The reason is simple. You want clarity. You don't want people pulling in different directions. You want everyone working in the same direction, going in the same direction. And so 3 to 5 is ideal. The fewer, the more specific, the better. How many key results? Under each objective, again, 3 to 5 is ideal, but you must make sure if they're completed, you will reach the objective. How do you know when your OKRs are right? Well, there's a simple test called the Stranger test. And the Stranger test is simply this. You should be able to pull someone, like quote unquote, off the street, have them come in and look at your OKRs and understand what it is that you're pursuing and how will you know if you're on the right track or not. In other words, what you're pursuing is the objective. How you know if you're on the right track or not are the key results. If a stranger can take a look at those things and say, this makes sense, like I understand, here's where you're aiming. Elon Musk is aiming to put someone on Mars. So it's logical that they first need to learn to connect people with the International Space Station, right? That's a logical key result in that process. Then they're right. You're headed in the right direction. What time frame should they be used? Most should be short term, short horizon, 3 to 6 months. We at Ugly Mug, we do all of ours on a quarterly basis. Actually, kind of like a 12-week period. So it's not, some quarters have 13 weeks and they vary. We do ours on a 12-week basis, and that's based on this book right here, 12-week year. Talk a little bit more about that in just a second. How should they look? They should start as a text document, but end with charts. You should always list the most impactful first. So charts are important. We talked about scoreboards earlier. Very, very important that you have charts and that people can quickly and clearly understand where they are on the scoreboard. Are they on track? Are they off track? What needs to take place to get them on track if not? A few warnings about setting OKRs. This is important. I unfortunately know some people who've learned this mistake the hard way, what I'm about to share with you. So this is a Ford Pinto. Ford Pinto was an extremely popular car. It was actually one of the best-selling Ford cars. And they had a simple objective when they built this car. The objective was to build an affordable, efficient, sporty car, right? So the objective was that. The key results were it had to be affordable, it had to be efficient, fuel efficient car, and it had to be sporty. That's what they were pursuing. Everything else, nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered in their pursuit of this thing. And for those who remember, this car had one problem. Does anybody out there remember what that problem was? Surely somebody out there. Steve, you know what the problem was? Heath, you remember this one? The problem was when rear-ended, sometimes this car would catch on fire, right? People actually died in these cars as a result of them being in a car accident and the car catching on fire and they couldn't get out of the car in time. So here's the thing. Ford knew of the issue. They knew of the issue. And they had a solution to the issue. The solution was that they put a steel plate in the back between the bumper, the back of the car, and where the gas tank was, that it would prevent this from occurring. Because what happened was when they would get rear-ended, the bumper would push up into the gas tank, causing a leak and therefore causing the fire. Well, the problem was this steel plate didn't meet any of their OKRs, right? So again, adding the steel plate would cost them additional money. It would make the car heavier, which would make it less fuel efficient. And so they did not add these steel plates to the back of the car, even though they knew they should have. And the lesson is this. The lesson is you have to make sure that your OKRs are not one-sided or lopsided. An example of this for most people would be this. If your objectives and key results are solely focused on sales, right? Increase sales, increase sales, increase sales. You've got to be careful that you have some objectives and key results around the fulfillment side of that, right? Around keeping customers happy, around ensuring that you're delivering remarkable service to your clients. So again, you've got to maintain that balance. If all your attention was focused on fulfilling and delivering remarkable experiences, but no focus on sales, getting new customers and getting new clients, you're not going to grow. You're going to stagnate. And so the importance is that you don't become one-sided, right? You keep a focus that is broad, that's making sure that when you're pursuing one thing, that it by default doesn't cause you to ignore something else that's important. Another mistake that we've seen so many people make when setting their OKRs is they go for perfection. And what I can tell you is we're 32 months into this process. Done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. It's not going to be perfect. Just start. Just start. Set your first OKRs, adapt and change as you go. How do you manage with OKRs? We're going to run through this real quick. So here's how we do it. First of all, we have every single week, we have one-on-one meetings, and that is where the supervisor meets with the team members. We also do a weekly team meeting. That's where everyone in the company is in the meeting. And during this meeting, people are presenting their OKRs, their goals for the quarter up on the screen. They're presenting their commitments, and they're talking about what their commitments are for the upcoming week. So here are my goals. Here's where I'm at in relation to those goals. And here's what I'm doing next week to ensure that I stay on track. And then there's peer-to-peer. So during the week, there's peer-to-peer accountability that takes place within departments to ask, to challenge, to keep people on track with their OKRs. And then quarterly, here's what we're doing quarterly. Quarterly, we're doing a quarterly performance review. We're doing a field of play review, which I will show you what that looks like. We're doing an OKR review, and then we create new OKRs every single quarter. We create new OKRs every single quarter based on where we are at that time, what was or what wasn't accomplished in the last quarter, and where we're heading in the future. This is the field of play. This document comes from this book right here. It's from this book right here. So the document's simply this. Imagine this as kind of as a football field. So on the very bottom down there, you'll see performance out of bounds. And that simply means if someone's not able to do their job, if they're not able to perform the role that they were hired to perform, they are out of bounds. And at some point, they will be terminated for that. On the left-hand side, you'll see terminal out of bounds. And what that means is if you do one of these things, whatever these things are, and it's maybe slightly different for every company, but if you do one of these things, you're going to be fired pretty much immediately. Stealing, lying, whatever those things may be for you and your organization. On the right-hand side, you'll see operational out of bounds. So these would be things like in your employee handbook that specify, that talk about what's expected, how do we operate? And for those things, you may not get fired immediately for those things, but you might get a warning, then you might get written up, and then you might get fired. If you keep going out of bounds on that side, eventually you would get fired. And you can see here, the goal line at the top would be the organization. Here's the big thing that we're pursuing, the big thing that we're going after. Here are the OKRs that we're pursuing in relation to that. And for an individual, that would be their individual OKRs. So OKR number 1, OKR number 2, OKR number 3. Here's what I'm pursuing. And you can see the performance line standard there's kind of once someone is above that line, above kind of I'm at the base level of performance or where I should be, they have immense freedom to pursue their OKRs. If they fall below that standard line, then they should be humble, like a humble player coming to their coach, to you as a leader, saying, how can you help me? Please help me get back on track with my goals. And so that's the field of play. It's a very helpful visual tool for aligning people, keeping them aligned. And for some people, for myself, for example, I like being able to see things visually. And so for me, this really helps understand how this all fits together in one piece. Reporting. Charts must be used. So when we do our team meeting, when we do one-on-ones, charts must be used. They're presented in their meetings with their managers. They're presented in the team meetings publicly. And then they're presented when new OKRs are created. So again, you want your organization to present these publicly. Each person on the team should be presenting their OKRs, depending on the size of your company. So there's 8 of us here full-time, and we present ours every single week, every single person in our team meeting on Mondays. As our company grows, that may change. In other words, we may not have time for everyone to present all of them, but for sure they would be presented in individual team meetings, so department meetings, et cetera. How do you get buy-in? Number 1 is you give autonomy. So once you as a leader establish where you're heading as an organization, you establish the big OKRs, you give them autonomy in setting their OKRs. Now, does that mean you can't give influence? Absolutely, you should help influence those OKRs, but you give them autonomy in setting those and figuring those out on their own. 2, you got to lead by example. You have to be willing to participate in the process as well. It's not just for everyone on the team, it's for you as well. And then using the field of play. Again, it creates that visual representation. So here's some actual examples of what some of ours have looked like in the past. So this would be an example of a big field of play. So this would be the objective with 3 key results underneath that, you can see. And let's look at each one briefly. So the objective was to close $500,000 by March 31st. And you can see that we're at currently 197. And if you look at the bottom left over there, you'll see per goal means where should they be at that specific point when this report was done? They should have been at 275. So what does that mean? That means they're behind on where they should be. And so they know that they need to pick up momentum. They need to focus on those key results, which comes next, right? They need to increase those activities. So again, key result number 1 to sell that much means we're going to have to contact 800 suspects. So suspects, slightly different term we use for a prospect. You can see the pro-rated goal was 440. They were at 412, right? Which means they're slightly behind. Key result number 2 was to present to 550 by March 31st. And you can see they're slightly ahead. So at 307, the pro-rated goal said they should be at 302. Key result number 3, right? 310 proposals. They were at 94, right? Out of 170 is where they should have been. So what this will tell you, if you go all the way back to this one, they were behind on this goal by roughly $75,000. I can't do math that quickly in my head, 77 or 78,000. They were behind on that. So the next question is, why were they behind? Well, if we look at this, we can say, okay, well, number 1, you're behind by roughly 30 people here, 20 something people, 28 people here on reaching out to suspects, people we suspect would be a good fit. You're over a little bit here, so that's good, but you're way behind here, right? On writing proposals. So it gives insight into what areas they need to focus on. The key results now help us understand where our attention needs to go. And it goes back to that one key word that we've talked about over and over again today, clarity, right? It goes back to clarity. You have to be clear about where you're going. That way they can be clear about how they're going to contribute and their role in that process. So what are the next steps? What are next steps for you? This is true for all of life, for business life in particular. Successful people take action. So again, I said at the very beginning of this, my goal isn't that you leave here with some new knowledge. Knowledge is useless unless it's applied. Okay, so I want you to take one thing that you've learned today, and I want you to go actually apply it. So here's 3 specific things that you could do. One, you could start identifying what objectives are you going to pursue over this quarter, over next quarter. The second thing you could do is schedule a meeting with your team. Meet with your team and begin this same conversation. What should we be pursuing? What are we currently pursuing? Where are we going to end up? And then the third thing is be consistent. Be consistent in this process. Don't give up because it's frustrating, because at the end of the day, consistency creates miracles. It's one of my favorite sayings: consistency creates miracles. So often it's the things that we dread, it's the things that we don't want to do. But when we do them over and over again, they create miracles. So for us, this 32-month journey of experimenting, going through these books, and adapting and changing what we've done, how we've established our goal setting system, that consistency has led to the results that we've been able to achieve over this last couple of years. And so I would challenge you, I would urge you to be consistent in experimenting with your goals. And here's the reality. The reality is, if we were to sit down, 6 months from now, a year from now, chances are good that the way we're pursuing our goals, the way we're structuring our goals, the way we're having our team meetings, our one-on-ones is going to change. And the reason isn't change for change's sake. The reason is simply this, that we want to get better at what we're doing. We talked yesterday a little bit about, good is the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great. And so often we settle for good, right? We settle for good because we look around and we say, you know what? We're good. We're good at what we do. We're better than the competitor. We're better than this. I'm better than my coworkers. I'm better than my peer, whatever it may be. And so being good becomes an excuse. And I would challenge you, don't allow good to be the enemy of great. Be consistent. Have the team meetings, have the one-on-ones, consistently review your OKRs, consistently take those actions that you know are going to drive success. So that is it. That is how we have adapted, how we've implemented change, how we've implemented these goals. If you have questions, leave a comment. We will go back through the comments. We will respond to the comments. Again, if you share this post, if you share this video on your Facebook page, we will enter you automatically to win one of these 3 books. Again, we're going to give away a couple of copies of each of these books. Steve, we're going to send you a copy of this one, Measure What Matters. Thanks again for taking time out of your day. If you have questions, feel free to reach out, leave us a comment here, send us a message. We'd love to help. Thanks again for watching, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.